Hello. Welcome to another episode of Sculpting at Home. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the mouth area, or as we call it in anatomy, the muzzle. The muzzle is the area on the skull that holds the teeth. So if you think about other animals, like dogs for instance, they've got a really long extended muzzle, but humans have them too. That curve of your muzzle area impacts your face. So if you're smiling, obviously you can see the curve of your teeth, but even when you have a serious face, that curve impacts that whole area of your face.
Excuse me!
Okay, Sylvester. Right, come on then. Come in. Okay. Let's have a look on Sylvester. So if we look on Sylvester, this is the area I'm talking about, that muzzle, and look how much it curves around. And it's a common mistake people make, that they make the teeth quite flat at the front, but that's not how teeth are. Look how he's got a bigger curve on the top, and then the curve of the bottom teeth sitting beneath and behind those front teeth, on most people. Obviously there's exceptions to the rule. So that gives that whole area underneath the nose a lovely curve. I've sculpted so many Hollywood smiles, and a lot of those actors have big wide curve of the palate, big wide smile with big teeth that have that big curve, like Cameron Diaz for example, or Michael B. Jordan. And when they're smiling you can see it very clearly because you can see their teeth, but even when people have their mouth shut you can still tell that they've got that shape beneath the skin. So if we look at Harry Styles that I sculpted, he's got his mouth shut, but you can still tell that he's got a really wide smile underneath there because he's got a really wide mouth, and his nasolabial folds, which are these creases that come down from your nose, look how wide apart they are. It's because it's got to fit that big curve of his teeth beneath his lips. So even with his mouth shut, you can tell that he's got a big, wide, teethy muzzle area. And then of course the opposite is true when people have a very narrow muzzle area. If we look at a couple of people I've sculpted here, if you look at Sylvester Stallone, he's got his mouth shut so you can't see his teeth, but you can see that he has got a very narrow curve of his teeth underneath there. His nasolabial folds are wide apart, but you can tell that they're coming around skin rather than his actual mouth corners. And then if we look at Will Ferrell, you can actually see his teeth, so you can see he's got that narrow muzzle area, and you can see that gap between his mouth corners and his teeth. There's actually a dark shadow there, whereas people that have a big teethy smile, it's just teeth from mouth corner to mouth corner. You can see he has actually quite small individual teeth, which is quite common when people do have a small mouth. Teeth. Who's had the biggest teeth? Well, that would have to be Freddie Mercury. He has the biggest teeth ever. When I sculpted him, I actually sculpted him mid-song in the classic Live Aid pose, kind of ooh. So you couldn't actually see his teeth, but you could see the skin stretched over those enormous gnashes. I'll tell you one other thing that impacts that shape of your lips as well is when rappers wear a grill. Like for instance, when I sculpted Lil Wayne, I sculpted him smiling. So he wears a grill on the top and the bottom. So the top grill was actually clear of his lips, so it didn't impact them, but the bottom one, you could see it really pushed out his bottom lip there. I can only imagine how much it pushes out his lips when he's got his mouth totally shut. It's a bit like when you have a block brace when you're a teenager, and for the first few days you feel like you've just got an enormous duck mouth. Let's get back to our sculpt of Mark then. And I'm going to start filling in this muzzle area. As you can see, right now it's very pinched in, so I'm going to fill that out. Now, if I look at my front-on picture of Mark, obviously we've got him in this angry baddie pose, so he's clenching his mouth together very angrily. So I can see the way the light's falling on there, that it's quite a nice broad curve there. It's something that you notice when you work from photos, like reading the light on forms. So I can see that's quite a wide curve. It's not all pinched in at the mouth corners, it's quite a wide curved shape. So I'm going to fill some of that in with clay. So I'm just going to start filling out that area now, and I can see from the pictures that it's curved from right either side of his nostrils there. I'm just doing it with my fingers. I'm not even worrying about tools at this stage. Just thinking about the curve of that part of his skull that his teeth are attaching onto. I'm thinking about how his top teeth are a bigger curve than his bottom teeth. You'll notice how I've always got my middle centre line drawn on. Just helps you to try and keep things more or less symmetrical, so you're keeping both sides moving at the same pace all the time. Don't want to end up with one side much bigger than the other. Obviously it's quite difficult for me to do this on camera because where I want to stand is right in front of it all the time, but I'm having to sort of guess a bit, especially on this side. So I'm imagining his cheekbones coming into that muzzle area, still quite skull-like at this stage. Now I've got that curve in, I'm going to just start very roughly modelling in the mouth. So I'm looking at my picture here. So first of all, I'm going to check my mouth width, which is the width of his mouth corners. And then from there, I'm going to look for the shape of his top lip, which if you look, it's like a really wide spread out M shape, and then his bottom lip, which is like a really flat flower pot shape, so it's like 1, 2, 3. So that's what I'm looking for on my sculpt. I'm just going to keep it quite loose at the moment, but just basically sketch it in. So first of all then, I'm going to just check that mouth corner measurement and mark that on. So I'm looking at my picture, I'm just putting in that sort of long M shape. It is a bit tricky on that side. Okay. And then on the bottom then, it's going to be that sort of three-sided flat flower pot shape. Hello, Leonard. I'm going to come up. Yeah, thought so. And now I want to draw on the nasolabial folds. Now, very common mistake people do is to make them go straight into your mouth corner, but that's not what happens. Look how they go around, then you have a fullness there and there in between the folds and your mouth corner. So I'm just going to draw them on and then fill out that sort of full area either side of the mouth corner a bit. So it's quite wide on mark. Something like that. Start with this side. There's my lips, there's my mouth corner, and always really frowning, so he's got that downturned mouth corners there. As I was saying before, you're just really gathering information at the moment. Obviously this is very, very early stages, but the more you notice all these little things, you're just building up information in your mind, and then when you come to actually really model them later on, then you'll remember, oh yeah, he's actually got quite a wide shape between his nasolabial folds there. So that's the fullness within it, and then kind of tucks into his mouth corner there. And then you've got the actual fold coming down like that. When you're just looking from the front, you're not really sure how far forward that comes, because I would be working from the front really. I'm just working over here so that you can see what I'm doing. But we'll look at the depth of those when we look from other angles. Okay, great, so that's roughly sketched in now. And the next thing I'm going to do is just look at the bottom lip a bit. And as I was saying, how the top muzzle is usually wider than the bottom one. You can see that on people's mouths. Look at how that top area is a big wide curve, and then you can see how the bottom lip kind of tucks in underneath, so it pushes back into those mouth corners. And that makes your bottom lip tuck in beneath the top lip, the same as your teeth, because they mimic what's happening with the structure underneath. When people have an underbite and their bottom teeth stick out further than their top teeth, then their bottom lip will obviously stick out further as well. So you normally have a kind of concaved bit here in the middle of your bottom lip, like that. And that makes that middle flat section, it's concaved under there, and then it cuts back diagonally those two sections. And then you have the curve of the chin like that. And then this bit kind of joins up with your chin like that, so I'm just going to make his chin a little bit wider. And then I'm also going to just carve in this middle bit here. So that's called your philtrum. So you have the two ridges coming down from your nose, flaring out like that. And then this bit is concaved, so. Model in those ridges a little bit. Basically, just to recap what I've been doing here, I knew where the join of my lips were, so I could base the shape of my mouth on that, and then I've made this nice shallow M shape top lip, and then the bottom lip tucking into those mouth corners with its three sides. And I've made my nasolabial folds coming down here, and then I've filled out this upper part of the mouth and thought about that big round curve. You know, it's a very common mistake when people have it very flat across the front of the mouth, but when you get that lovely curve, it starts making the whole face feel like it's flowing from front to back. And then I've just worked a little bit on my chin, just joining it up so that it all flows into the chin there. And then I've carved in the philtrum. Oh yes, I do get asked this one a lot, Fernando. I think I'm going to have to use my special powers for this one. I mean, it is exhausting, but needs must. So, right, okay, I'll see you later. Bye. I've just had a question come in, and again, I do get asked this quite a lot. It's someone sculpted their head, they're really pleased with it, and they want to know, can they now just leave it to dry out and paint it and keep it? Well, the answer unfortunately is no. If you've sculpted water-based clay onto an armature like this, or even if you've sculpted in oil-based clay, you can't keep it and it stay nice and hard and last forever, you will need to make a mould of it. So I'm just going to nip to the future and get a mould, because obviously I haven't moulded this yet. So I'm just going to pop to the future, come back, and then I can explain it to you better with a mould. Oh, it's exhausting. Right, I'm back from the future and I've got my mould here now to show you so I can explain it better. Now, when you have a positive clay and you want to make a negative mould, you need to make it in two parts so that it can open up. Imagine like an Easter egg. You know how they always have a seam around the edge? It's because it's moulded in two parts and then it's hollow, and that's how you make a mould and a cast. And the cast is the permanent material that you then make a copy of your sculpture in. So if I'm going to mould a head like this, I always put a join down around the head, behind the ears and over the shoulders like that, and then it will have to have a flange around the bottom and the back, and then you have two halves that open up. So I'm going to show you my mould of Mark now. So this is the front half, and as you can see there's a very cool effect when you have a hollow head. It kind of looks like it's positive. It's a very weird thing when you first see a mould. So this is the front half of his face. So you can imagine when you've demoulded it, taken the mould off your sculpture, that's the whole front half of his face in negative. So this is a silicone mould, which means that it's got a flexible rubber inside and then it's held in place with this hard jacket, or in America they call it a mother mould, the hard jacket. So I've got two halves like that, and then to make a positive again, you have to paint or swill the insides with a permanent material like plaster or resin. So then eventually you end up with a positive version of your sculpture which you can keep, and that's not going to crack or dry out or anything like that. So that's jesmonite, which is a kind of acrylic resin. It's kind of a cross between plaster and fiberglass resin, but it's non-toxic, so I like it. And there we have it. That's there for you to keep. Now, it is a bit of a complicated process, mould making, and if you are interested in learning this, I have made an ebook which is on my Sculpting Masterclass website. And it's very detailed, step-by-step photos, just takes you through the whole process from making the mould, casting it, mounting it on a base so that you can make a permanent copy of your sculpture. So I hope that answers your question for you. Now, I've got a cup of tea going cold. Sylvester makes a lovely cup of tea. He always makes it in bone china. So I'm just going to sketch on the basic shapes that I'm looking for at this stage of doing the muzzle. So if his nose is kind of there, then I want to find the shape of those nasolabial folds coming down. I know where his centre of his lips are there, so then I want to find that kind of long flat M shape of his top lip. He's got quite turned in thin lips, so they're kind of like that, and then that shape of the three sides of the bottom lip like that, and then his mouth corners kind of come down like that because he's grimacing, because he's such an angry man. And then we're going to look at how this area is quite concaved here. You've got the curve of the chin coming down there, and then the kind of quite flat bit along the bottom of the chin, and it comes up like that, and then the rest of his face comes down like that. And then we're also going to just carve in that central philtrum shape there, so you get those two ridges coming down, carved out bit there. You've got that very pushed back top lip, and then the bottom lip is sticking out a bit more, and then you've got these sort of shapes coming down here, which I always think of as the side panels of the mouth. You have a really beautiful drawing there. And that's my muzzle sketched in, looking just from the front angle. So you'll notice that in these early stages, I'm quite disciplined about only working from a few different angles. So we've really only been looking from the front and the side so far. And in the next lesson, I'm going to be looking at those 3/4 angles. So we'll start to look at those sort of profiles and start filling out some of these parts of the face a bit more. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to go and download the pack so you can sculpt along with me at home, go on over to Sculpting Masterclass where you can purchase the whole pack of measurements and photographs of Mark. And if you can't wait to have a go at sculpting, then there's lots of other video courses and things on there for you to have a look at as well.